All right, ready?
Yes.
All right, good evening. Welcome to the Wednesday, February 5th, 2025 special board work session of the Gresham-Barlow Board of Education. Roll call in attendance: Chris Howitt, Holly Riegelman, Blake Peterson, David Ligatich, Sean Farns, and online joining us is Myra Gomez. There's one change to the agenda. We do not have item C, the personnel executive session. That will be removed from the agenda with the adoption of the agenda. So if there's a motion to approve the agenda as amended with removal of item C, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the agenda with removal of item C.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by David, seconded by Sean to approve the agenda as presented with removal of item C, the executive session under personnel. Any discussion about the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? All right, thank you. Our first item of business is we're going to get our audit results, and it looks like we have our people online. Weather was a little bit bad today, so glad you could join us online this evening. And we'll just go ahead, introduce yourselves, and then I don't know if we want to introduce who else is in the room. Dennis, do you want to let everybody know who else is here in support of you?
Absolutely. For the business office, we have Pete. Thank you. And we have Margaret.
Right out.
Thank you. They have challenging names. So those are the business office staff, along with myself, that are here in support of the audit.
Okay, all right. So with that, I will turn it over to, I believe, our auditors. Is there anything that you're starting with, Dennis, or are we starting with their presentation?
We will start with their presentation.
Okay, all
Margaret,
right.
Did you have anything?
I'd just like to introduce our auditors.
Okay,
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Margaret Breithaupt. I'm the Director of Accounting. I would like to introduce you to our auditors from KDP. This is Aria Bettinger. She's an audit partner. And Maria Macy, who is an audit manager. They're the people we worked with during the audit, and they'll be presenting to you this evening.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. Yeah, so hi, everybody. My name is Aria Bettinger. I'm here in Medford, so I do appreciate us being able to present this remotely. We have about a foot of snow here, which is very unusual for us, and everything is really shut down. I'm here with Maria Macy. Like Margaret said, she was the manager on the audit, so she is going to start by presenting the audit, and then after that, I will share the required communications with governance, and then we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Hi, I'm Maria. As Aria said, I'm the manager on the audit, and I have been a manager with KDP for well, I haven't been a manager for 9 years, but I've been with KDP for 9 years. And to start, I figured I would share my screen and we can go through a couple of our audit letters and just some general key points throughout the audit we would like to communicate with you. I think I had to send a request to share, and if that works.
I did select to allow you to share, so you should be able to now.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. Do you see my PDF of the audit?
Yes, we do.
All right, perfect. So to start us off, I actually find that it's a little bit easier to go to the back of the audit, and we're going to start with the schedule of the findings and question costs. This very generally goes through basically all of our different letters that we have in the audit and our different opinions. So I'll start here. In the first one, I would like to know at the top of this page, it says the type of report we issued was with GAAP was unmodified. Unmodified opinion means a clean opinion, and that is the highest level of assurance that we can provide within our audit. If The details of this are found on page A1 of our independent auditors report. And I'll just go over a few key points in here with you all. In our opinion, these financial statements referred to are in all material respects unmodified is what that says. Like I said, that's a clean opinion and it is the highest level of assurance we can offer. I also want to touch on the responsibilities of management and for us as the auditors. Management's responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in according with generally accepted accounting principles, and for the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal control relevant to that. Our job as the auditors is our objective is to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatement, and that's whether due to fraud or error, and to issue a report that includes our opinions. Reasonable assurance is a high level of assurance, but it's not absolute. That being said, as I mentioned before, the district got a unmodified opinion and a clean opinion. We do have an emphasis of matter here. We discussed that in note 16. We restated beginning net position for governmental activities due to the correction of some errors. The details of this in note 16 are on page 46. And Aria later will go into the details of all of these with you and you'll be able to ask questions. But for now, I'll kind of go through a brief overview. If we go back to the schedule of finding and question costs, we do have another letter, and this is our government auditing standards letter. Within this letter, there was a couple findings, and I will go through a few of what that means and what we're talking about there. So in planning and performing our audit, we considered the district's internal control over financial reporting as a basis for designing our procedures. This kind of goes into risk assessment, right? What we're looking at where risk might be. But it's not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness. Accordingly, we do not express an opinion on the effectiveness of the district's internal control. You'll see I have a few more paragraphs highlighted here, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about what those are. To start, a material weakness is a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies in internal control that it's reasonably possible that a material misstatement could not be prevented. We have some more details in the back of the audit regarding that. And a significant deficiency is a deficiency or combination of them in internal control that is less severe, yet important enough to merit attention from the board. We've also gone through those in more detail in the back of the audit, and Aria will describe those for you as well once we go through our communication letter. Back to this regarding federal awards. So the school district, much like many school districts, received over $750,000 in federal awards for the year. This requires the district to undergo what's called a single audit, where we look at the different federal programs and look at the controls related to that. For the single audit this year, what was selected for testing was the ESSER, or Education Stabilization Fund, AL 84.425, in the child nutrition cluster. Regarding federal programs, once again, our opinion was unmodified, so that was clean and the highest level of assurance that we can provide. And in our opinion, the district complied in all material respects to the types of compliance requirements that we looked at related to these programs. Again, to touch on management's responsibility and our own, Management's responsible for the compliance with the requirements referred to above and the design, implementation, and maintenance of effective internal control. Our objective is to, once again, that word reasonable, is to obtain reasonable assurance about whether material non-compliance were occurred and whether due to fraud or error, and express an opinion on the district's compliance based on our audit. One more related to compliance. In the state of Oregon, we're also required to look at different provisions in the Oregon revised statutes as specified in the Oregon administrative rules, which we do look at, and we look for any non-compliance with which that could have a direct or material effect on the determination of the financial statement amounts. However, providing an opinion on compliance with those provisions was not the objective of our audit, and we do not express an opinion. In connection with our testing related to Oregon state regulations, nothing came to our attention that caused us to believe the district was not in substantial compliance with certain provisions, laws, regulations, contracts, and grants, except as noted in note 1. And that is also noted on page 16 of the audit. There is a sentence in there in the budget paragraph that can also explain that a little more. And that's kind of a very general brief overview of our different opinion letters that we go through in the different items that we looked at throughout the audit.
Thanks, Maria. I was going to go ahead and share some of our communications with governance unless anybody wanted to jump in with any questions right now, but it might be, if some of them might be answered with the next communications, but I wanted to give people a minute if they had any questions.
So there were some questions, Chair Howard, thank you for letting me address you properly. There were some questions that came in from other board members. I'm happy to raise those now. I'm
Yeah,
happy
I
to
don't believe I
wait.
saw them, so if you have them, go ahead. And then I have a question. I know I looked through all this. Where was this document sent to us? Because I'm not finding where it was. Was it not ever, because I printed some pages out. I've got quite a few, and I just don't remember what I saw and where I saw it.
This one's on the agenda, but the letter is on the work session.
Yeah.
It's at the very end of the agenda, the very end, this
It's
one's
on
on the
the
very
other-
end of the.
It's on that one. Okay, because I kept trying to
that
find
one's
it
public,
in,
But the letter is on the work session.
right, and I got that. So, okay, that's what I was trying to find, because sorry, I cannot see your screen at all. I might have to pop over here and watch
Well,
Sarah's,
And I
but
had to log out so that I could see the letter right now, because when I'm logged in, it doesn't give me the option to view the agenda. So I logged out, went to the public site, and then you can see it if you're.
okay, all right.
Probably
Thank you,
prefer.
thank you. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Margaret.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I'll address the questions in the order that they came to me. The first was regarding the bond-related deficiency findings, did our reporting practices change? Or does this reflect a difference of opinion between Polly Rogers, that's our former auditors, and KDP, represented here by Maria and Aria? And my response is both and. Our recording practices changed in 23-24 as part of the audit process in response to the audit. Auditors use a tool called materiality. It is their discretion to determine materiality based on their risk assessment of their clients. Polly Rogers did not consider the difference between how we were doing things and how we now have changed to do things to be material. Therefore, they did not suggest it as an adjustment. And that is why you hadn't heard of this before today. KDP provides a high quality service, and their risk assessment as a result is different than Polly Rogers. So, 10,000 foot, 5,000 foot, there's an analogy. when you lower your materiality threshold, when you decide that suddenly things that cost less are more important than the previous auditor may have thought they were, you're going to scoop up, it's like a sieve or a rake. You're gonna scoop up more stuff. So to answer this question, yes, our reporting practices changed as a result of the audit. The difference, Holly Rogers didn't necessarily had a different opinion. They had a different risk assessment and a different materiality threshold. This change that was made during this audit aligns us with generally accepted accounting principles, or what you'll hear referred to as GAAP. If you hear that, that's what that means. And all tables have been adjusted to ensure that for the remainder of the debt service related to the bond, we will be in compliance with GAAP. This matter, therefore, has been addressed. Second question, do the findings of the audit change our net position in a material way? If so, for better or worse, compared to our assumptions entering bargaining? Excellent question. I'm so glad you asked. In government, we do things two different ways. So what I happen to know, based on reading your bios, is that some of you are small business owners. And I'm willing to bet that you have books that you keep in your business. And then come tax time, you do an accrual to cash conversion with your tax accountant to help you decide which deductions to take. And so if you look at your tax return and you look at your books, they don't match. There's an adjustment that happens, and it's as a result of what's called accounting bases. In government, we have further still a third set of accounting bases called modified accrual. Why does this matter? Net position is a full accrual number. It's like, could be compared to the numbers you see in your books that your bookkeeper produces for you and your business. Ending fund balance is a modified accrual number, which is modified accrual is the language we speak. It's how the board reports that are presented to you monthly are prepared. It's how we usually do business. And then once a year, we go full accrual for the purposes of this. So did the net position change? Yes, it did. As Maria highlighted in note 16, there's talks about where exactly it changed. And net position is not the number we use when we are trying to decide what we can afford in negotiations. For that, we use ending fund balance. I've replied to Superintendent Cook with exact page numbers on where you can find net position as opposed to ending fund balance. And then you can true that up with this, the one we use for negotiations, this, the one we use when we're talking to the bank. Yes, they're different. Yes, that's weird. It has to do with accounting bases. Did that?
Could I ask, would there have been any, so this would only have affected the full accrual, not the modified accrual, and so our ending fund balance would not have changed.
Some of our adjustments affected modified accrual, most affected full accrual. Going into the audit, we had a projected ending fund balance modified accrual number of about 16.3 million. Coming out of the audit, we had 19.33. So some
positive. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And I want to add, some of that's related to accounting adjustments and some of that's just related to closing entries. But we went into negotiations using the budgeted ending fund balance of about 16.3 million. Where we actually landed, and I can say this with confidence now that the audit is finished, is 19.33.
That's a point in time, right? That's as of.
That's like checking the oil on June 30.
Okay.
Yep. And it's audited. And that's so
Yeah.
we can say with certainty,
And Margaret, correct me if I'm wrong, it does help us with the beginning fund balance for budget.
Absolutely. Ending becomes beginning. It's our stake in the ground when we're setting up the tent in the new year. This was an excellent question. If you're interested, if you're like, what did she just say? And you want to do some at-home reading, in the notes to the financials on page 12 of the ACFR, which will be published on our website and has been shared with you, you can see a discussion of the difference between modified and full accrual accounting. It's a bit technically heavy, but I think it can serve as helpful. Odd request, actually a great request in my opinion, was to present 3 different examples of letters that KDP has issued for other districts. I have shared these with Sarah and Sarah Avery and Superintendent Cook. The three examples that I chose were Ashland School District. This is a school district that switched to KDP from Polly Rogers in fiscal year 22-23. These are their reports as of 23-24. As Director Riegelman correctly identified, communications with the governing body are not public record. However, the ACFR is public record. So while I wasn't able to get you their communication for the governing body, every other communication will be included in that packet. The second district I chose is Klamath Falls County School District. This is the client that I think most closely is comparable to Gresham-Barlow and the KDP portfolio that they presented us during the bid process. This is a district that has worked with KDP for years and is now, over the course of years, working through the process of cleaning up some very similar issues. You will find that, again, no communication with governance, but a lot of the other letters, I know there's a lot. The third that I offer as an example is Roseburg. This is an example of a client that's worked with KDP for so long that they're like dialed, okay? And so here's an example of where we're headed. Like I said, all of these have been given to Avery and John, and I think it's a great question. Benchmarking, or what I suspect is benchmarking, is a great way to kind of go, are we an outlier or not in this matter? So that concludes the first set of questions. The second set came in as number 1 at the bottom of page 43. Kudos to you who read this document. Sometimes I think no one ever does. And so at the bottom of page 43, it's listed that the amount spent for the student-based health center was $3,315,666. The funding we received was about $3 million in grants. Can you tell me which fund the additional $315,666 came out of? Energy funds related to Senate Bill 1149.
So
Which
none of
is-
the funds were, because all of these essentially were grant funds used for that. Correct.
Not 1 penny of general fund.
Yes, nothing from general fund. It was energy funds, which is, I don't want to say unfettered, but it's easier to use for different things. And there were some surprise things required by the city of digging a trench under the street to connect different light things and other things. It wasn't part of the original bid that caught us going over.
The trees going down last time. Yeah.
There were a few things, but trees of significance.
Trees of significance every time.
Yeah.
That was your band's name, wasn't it?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Maria and Aria, in the city of Gresham, we have something about trees of significance, and it can put a real wrench in construction. But they're beautiful trees. Number 2, and I'm gonna kick this one to Dennis, but I'll read it first. Also on this page, the Ray remodel. Ray is one of our high school programs. Came in at $371,402. The board approved spending of $320,000. Can you tell me the process the district follows when the cost comes in over the amount approved? Does it ever come back to the board for additional approval? Take it away, Mr. Clegg.
Generally, the process is, unless it becomes a 50% increase or a significant number. With special circumstances, it generally would not go back to the board. In this case, the cost of the HVAC units that were installed and the ductwork came back significantly higher than anticipated. And to offset that, again, the energy money was used to take care of that. So it was another unexpected thing. Part of it, some of the stuff was so backlogged in being produced. It took time and it took more money to get it in the time needed to get the project done.
And take this with a grain of salt, just as another example. And like I said, please take it with a grain of salt. I believe we used energy money for some of the turf field lighting as well to cover that overage too. So.
It's a great program that Terry has been a steward to. Did you have something? Number 3 of this set of question was on page 46. There's an amount of $920,570 listed as enterprise zones. Can you tell me more about this? Is this an abated amount that we pay in taxes for our buildings or something else? It has nothing to do with the enterprise zone change. Oh, excuse me. It has nothing to do with the enterprise zone changes that were recently discussed with the city of Gresham. Is that correct? Excellent question. Government Accounting Standard Board Statement 77 talks about. I'm so like.
You read that
You
later.
just hate my day
No,
with this.
right.
Like this, stuff, I'm just a real weirdo. So GASB 77 talks about, hey, if we're gonna abate taxes for whether it's an enterprise zone, a religious institution. Ourselves, in the case of the county not taxing themselves for county property, right? We should talk about that in the financials, because the taxpayers need to understand that when they make that decision, there's a dollar amount attached to it. So that's what we're disclosing here. We disclose material abatements. These are the abatements that needed to be disclosed for the fiscal year 23-24, July 1, 23 to 6/30/24. My understanding of what is being discussed with the city of Gresham has to do with future impact. So I cannot speak to much of anything with regard to what's being discussed with the city of Gresham, but if abatements were to be put in place related to enterprise zones for city of Gresham or anyone else, it would eventually show up here, depending on when it happened. If it happens from July 1 to 24 to 6/30/25, yeah, we're gonna have a dollar not related to that. If it doesn't, then it won't. But you hit really perfectly on something that I think accountants spend a lot of time and energy trying to help readers of the financial statements understand, which is all decisions ultimately have costs, and we're just trying to measure how much. And so, yes, while it isn't here now, because it hasn't happened yet, if it were to happen, that is where you would see the financial impact of that. That is one place where you would see the financial impact of that. You would see specifically the amount abated that is related to Gresham-Barlow's tax levy.
But, so that's what we would have received in a year in local tax revenue if those properties were not abated. Is that a way to see it?
Yes, if existing enterprise funds. So I believe, for example, that some of the buildings just across the math tracks from Cal. That I don't know if it's an enterprise zone abatement, but it's some kind of abatement. I go on walks, I look at it, I go, there's a tax abatement. Vertical housing, thank you, Pete. It's a vertical housing abatement, okay? So we look at that and we go, oh, look at that vertical housing abatement. You guys don't see it that way, you see something else, but now, yeah, exactly. So, but see how it all relates is like, yes, you abate, but then you get the kids. And so the kids bring in, I'm not gonna opine on this, is what's gonna happen now. So GASB 77 discloses just that abatement part. It doesn't disclose if additional students come in, what's the change to the state school fund, that's a separate thing. This is just when the county abates taxes. A portion of what the county collects is related to Gresham's levy, whether it's our operating levy or our bond levy. What didn't we collect? Yes,
And we don't have an operating.
I may have used an incorrect term.
We don't have one, but.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Okay,
We
because there
do
are
not-
people who would like us to have one and we do
Yes.
not. Okay.
We have, I'm Janice. Help me out. What is
So I
the
was listening.
correct term for the levy that we have for just, that every district has? I'll get back to you on that.
Okay,
But you are
okay.
correct. We do not have
Okay.
what I sometimes call a local option levy.
Right.
We
right.
have what I'll call
No, we do
a
not. have that.
vanilla levy, and then we have a
Okay.
bond levy.
Okay,
But no local option levy.
okay, thank you.
That is the end of the questions I've received thus
Are
far.
you referring to a tax levy?
Yeah, and maybe that's it.
Yeah.
I'm
we have a
drawing
tax
away.
levy and we have a bond
There you go.
at this point.
Thank
We
you.
have the
Dennis.
local option levy, we haven't ventured into that world. But yes, we do every year here on tax rate, here's what is levied by the two counties.
There you go.
And then same thing with the bond.
Excellent.
Could I ask a question? Related to that ending fund balance, $3 million difference?
Mhm.
Is any portion of that ESSER funding that will be spent after that moment, but we won't get back, like,
Now that is just general fund.
okay, that's just, okay.
It could have been built up by moving things to ESSER, but no. There's no grants, there's no strictly general. Fund.
It's, yeah, this is wonderful, super helpful and informative. It's, I think hitting the, you know, the new chapter that we're all knowing we're walking into. Us, the susceptibility of a board misrepresenting. The district's position and making a bad decision because of that is just right, and so I'm trying to make sure that 19.3 is real. And so that number's gonna stick in my brain, and if it shouldn't be real, then you.
If for some reason we're forgetting it's sticking in other brains. Yes.
Maybe this is not the right time to ask, but, and I think it maybe is covered by those letters, but. How difficult is it to come in the first year for your new clients to have similar findings? Is this something that's out of the ordinary? Is this kind of standard practice?
Great question. Aria, Maria?
Yeah, that is a great question, and I guess I would say it really is, there's a range, there's always going to be a range, and so there are times when we get into a new client and yeah, there are findings. It might, we tend to audit a little bit deeper than maybe some audit firms do. And especially when you have a set of fresh eyes, that can open things up as well. So it's a range. I can't really give you any kind of solid answer, but I think that the time when you're most going to have findings or issues generally are at the beginning of a relationship. Because also when you've established that relationship, then, if there are questions, like we're very open to answering questions throughout the year, it just becomes more of a relationship. So there's just less room for these things to continue. Things happen. It always happens, but I would say the first year would be the highest risk for findings.
And I think Margaret might have said something, or I read it in one of the other documents, that there were some things that they changed in how they wanted school districts to report certain aspects. And so some of that then changed with maybe where the money used to be sitting in this bucket, now it's over in this bucket, or it's reported in a different way. So is that also a real layman's term understanding?
The Government Accounting Standards Board. Accountants are unique in that we're constantly pulling the rug out from under ourselves. The Government Accounting Standards Board issues new pronouncements at a rate of, in the last 5 years, maybe 2 to 3 per year. That is 2 to 3 times per year that we reassess everything and change how we do things, or don't, if the amount of change isn't material. Other changes you were familiar with was GASB 68, when we added PERS. Remember what that did to net position? Turned everyone upside down. It's a GASB pronouncement.
Okay.
So yes, your assessment is correct. Some of this is not just school district, but governments.
Government. Okay. And kind of just a little tag onto that I might come and ask for your knowledge on. The legislature is trying to do some legislation that would mandate training for board members to understand the basics of what we're looking at, so that we are looking at it consistently, so we ask the right questions, so we understand the answers that we get. So they're trying to create a financial literacy for board members, and I'd like for them to stay in their lane and help us. So I will look for some help on that.
Said you're not gonna submit opinion, I will withhold opinion.
Trying to stay in my lane.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm
Chris,
just talking about the legislature staying in their lane. Yeah.
Excuse me, Director Howitt,
Yeah, it's okay.
if there's any way I can help with that, please don't
Okay.
hesitate to leave contact.
And I wanted to say, when we looked at changing from Polly Rogers to another, we considered, we reached out to KDP and others to put in a proposal. We knew some of these things were going to change. We knew, we would take a deeper dive, particularly in the first year. We knew that was going to happen. We anticipated, thought there could be findings that had been, at a different threshold with a prior audit. So this isn't a total surprise, at least to the business department, and I hope And then when we changed auditors, we tried to communicate that to the board, but, we were not totally caught off guard by this.
Well, for me personally, I can't speak for my fellow board members, but I would appreciate the desire to go deeper as opposed to less deeper, you know. It just will help.
That's
us.
what we were looking for. We thought we could find an audit firm that would do a deeper dive, that would look at things with a keener eye. And to be honest, that we already have a long-term relationship with, where complacency can come into play.
Yeah.
You know, Paul Rogers knew our procedures, we knew what they wanted. You know, did it become just a, here you go, do whatever.
Mhm.
It could have been, I don't wanna
Yep.
disparage that, but we knew this was going to get us in a much more a stronger position in our audit, dealing with things that other, districts have had to adjust to. And we wanted that, we wanted a strong audit firm to come in and evaluate us, and that first year is always tough. We're growing pains on both sides. We thought we knew what we were getting into. KDP would say the same, that, as things got going, the deeper dive they were doing just kind of drug things out. So I want to make sure that the board understands that this was intentional, to get to this point.
And I'm just gonna double check. Myra, I know you're listening. I didn't know if you had any questions or comments, if you either want to type anything and send it to us, or if you want to come on and ask any questions.
No, I don't have any questions. I appreciate the explanation and I support the idea of giving school board members a deeper training on finances, like it was mentioned earlier.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anytime you want to hear about Gatsby pronouncements.
I'm on it.
With that, I wonder if there's any more questions, and if not, I would transition back to our auditors. Any other additional questions?
I think, Seth, did you have something to show? Okay. No, all right, so back to them. All right, thank you.
Okay, well, I am going to now attempt to share my screen and go through these letters. I am not as familiar with Zoom. Oh, here we go. Is that working?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Okay, so I will try to spend enough time, but I realize we're kind of getting there on time, so I might also try and move through a little bit. Yes.
This is the letter that the board received from you, but that is not public record. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, really everything is
But
available.
we're in a public meeting right now, so if you are not wanting us to have this out yet, then I would take that off of sharing your screen.
That wasn't my intention of asking.
Okay.
It was to help you place in time amongst the many, many letters you've received, what we were looking at.
The board
Okay.
chair's point is well taken.
Yeah, so is this public right now?
It is.
Because we're in a public meeting right now.
It is,
This document is not public record. This
right, but we're in a
meeting is
public meeting, that makes it a
It's-
public.
Yeah,
meeting.
I can
okay,
stop sharing
sharing it
my
on there.
screen.
It's
I can
public.
stop sharing my screen and we can just discuss.
Please.
That'd be great.
That feels better.
Yes.
Thank you.
And this meeting, you can, because we have provided you with all of these communications documents, you're welcome to guide how you'd like this portion to go. I don't want to make any presumptions, so I can review this kind of high level, and if you have further questions, we can go into it. So you did receive 2 letters. The first letter is related to it's called our communication to those charged with governance. It's about 5 pages. It addresses some of the standard communications that are underlying the audit processes, the audit numbers. They might not be evident within the audit itself, but it explains some of those details so that you as a board can discharge your oversight responsibility and we comply with our professional standards. First, we talk about some significant accounting practices, including policies, estimates, and disclosures. For the year ending June 30th, 2024, there were no significant accounting policy changes, except as noted in that restatement, that it was related to the accreted interest and the amortization of the bond premium. There are significant estimates within all financials. It's an inherent part of a financial statements, and we call out the ones that have the biggest impact, and those are related to accumulated depreciation and related expense for fixed assets. There are 2 estimates related to other post-employment health benefits, 2 estimates related to pension liabilities, and also estimates related to property taxes receivables. As your auditors, we review management's underlying assumptions for those estimates. We look at census data, perhaps that was provided to the actuary for things like the pension and OPEB estimates. We look at those and we determine that they were reasonable in this context as a whole. We also call out some financial statement disclosures, which we consider significant. I mean, they are all significant, but we call out a few of them. We also in this letter discuss some of the audit adjustments that were proposed and corrected by management. There was a proposed audit adjustment that was not considered material that management opted to not post, not in their side, and we did not have a problem with that. We just like to call that out to the board, and our opinion was not modified. There's a separate letter that is referred to here related to some internal control findings. That was the material weakness and significant deficiencies that Maria spoke about. And that is in the also within the back of the audit itself, but then we have that separate communication to you.
That piece is public record.
Okay. There are some other matters that we identified within this communication that we did not think rose even to the level of control deficiency. They're just matters that we wanted the board to be aware of for your oversight responsibilities. If you have any questions about them, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, we just discussed that our independence, we are independent of the district. We have responsibilities. The district has responsibilities to be able to maintain that independence, and we'd like to make that very clear. And then overall, this audit, yes, it was very intensive. It was very long. I would say though that working with Margaret and Pete has been great. We really appreciate how collaborative they've been, how great they've been to work with, and we just really wanted to recognize that and share that with the board. I do not know if you want me to go into the internal control letter or not. That is up to you.
I'm not sure.
Well, so there's a statement out there that we'll approve
Right.
about the staff mediation.
Right.
And so I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I think I just have one question related to that remediation plan. Is our current level of staffing sufficient to meet all of those requirements? Or are you anticipating a shift in staffing?
Go and speak to what we talked about today. You can do that.
Thank you, Superintendent.
We don't want to go into the depth of finance piece,
Yes,
but
I'm
what we're
wondering
talking
how
about.
much Margaret I want to bring to this
Yeah.
meeting. All right. Be careful what you ask for, Director Peterson. I'm a CPA. I'm a certified public accountant. I used to do what Maria and Aria do. I've maintained throughout this entire audit process that while it has been painful, difficult, confusing, long days, all the things, exhausting, that I am both professionally satisfied and completely confident that this was the right decision for Gresham-Barlow School District, considering the future we see in front. That doesn't come without a cost. Not unlike tax abatements, where you pay that cost is up to you. Part of the reason that this audit took as long as it did and cost as much as it did is that we have chosen to take shortcuts that were considered immaterial in the name of efficiency and operating with a less than ideal staffing. group in the finance department. The decisions that were made that resulted in some of these things were done because, as I'm sure you all do in your professional lives, at the end of the day, something has to give to get it all done. And so we worked with our auditors at the time and made a calculated decision to say, we're gonna do this the quick and dirty way, not the super duper buttoned up gassy fundamentalist way, which is the way I want to do it every time. But at the end of the day, there isn't enough always to do that. So here's what I want to say. You can unring this bell. I'm not suggesting we do this. I don't want, but if we were to go out and get a new auditor next year, the first thing they would do is look at these reports and contest these things. There is no going back to poly records, right? Nor would I want to. So yes, it is going to be a heavy lift, not just to get us to a place. We've done a lot of work to correct these things already, right? So like on the timeline, like we've been here, we've been heading up. We're gonna have to perform up here for a while. And then we're gonna come back down and reach a new stasis, but it is never going to be the level that it was. I am working, and part of the reason Superintendent Cook smiled at me and
I don't know, smile.
is that we were discussing this earlier today. I'm working with Superintendent Cook, Dennis Clay, my team, Superintendent, not elect. Just future.
Just Dr. Clay, yeah.
Superintendent-elect, that's what we're gonna say.
I love that. To see how getting the district's financial needs met fits within what is otherwise not a picture where we add spending. And the way we get an audit to cost less is doing this maintenance throughout the year. And the way we do that is we hire people who have the skills, knowledge, and experience to do it. And in the finance department, we currently don't.
To get direct, but I can't give you the specifics because there are entities that would be impacted by the proposal that they gave to that we haven't spoken to just today. But Margaret offered a pretty cost neutral option that we need to look at to add staffing to address the audit as we move forward in the future. Given how we're working through the spring budgeting process right now, it's on the list of what do we need to do, is this something we can or should do? So know that it's been proposed. That was today, to answer your question directly.
So then I have another, just sort of a statement that goes in with this, and never, well, that's the way we've always done it. No,
Yeah.
that is not my statement here. However, previously, there was more, and we do have a little bit more time because
Yes.
we had an item that was canceled off of our agenda. So, previously, there were a couple of other check-in points with the board through the process. This go around, there was the initial conversation that I think I was the only one that had from the board. And I don't think that there was any other individual, where previously we would have individual conversation with it, kind of asking questions about not the in-depth kind of stuff. We're not the accountants, but do you have any questions about what you've seen? Is there anything that you're unsure about? What would you
Yeah.
like us to look at? And that didn't happen this time. So, you know, whether it does it in person or a document or just a reminder for the board that to ask those questions early on.
So to get to up to speed, Aria and Maria, the way that Polly Rogers does things is they send out a email board fraud questionnaire every year and they expect every board member to respond. I believe what you're describing is the in-person fraud questionnaire.
Both, a little bit of both, yeah.
And beyond that, I'll let Aria and Maria address this question.
Okay.
I mean, that's really great feedback. I think we can certainly incorporate that into future years. It sounds like that would be really helpful and desired by the board. And so we will make a note of that and keep the board, reach out to the board more throughout the process.
Yeah, just with the real firm that the board isn't directing the audit, but just so that we are aware, in case someone asks us a question, we know to refer it back to Margaret or Pete.
Yeah, and you know, feel free to reach out to us as well if you feel like you're not getting what you need or want from us. You know, we work for you. We want you to feel like we're providing the service you want us to provide. So at any time, you're welcome to reach out to us as well.
One solution that Margaret and I have talked about, I think others have as well, is some boards have a committee that is the audit committee. So a couple of board members would have that opportunity for a couple of touch points through the process. And that might be a solution that.
We've talked about something similar to that, and also incorporating a couple of budget committee members who've wanted to be involved in a different way and having sort of a finance committee without that committee making decisions about the finance. They're pulled from the budget committee, but they are not representing the budget committee. They're just another set of eyes on it. So we've had informal conversation about that. And haven't been able to move that forward. So Margaret's shaking her head. She's ready to start it tomorrow. I could.
Audit committee.
All right. Okay. All right.
I think that all of this is just. Along with the sensitivity of looking forward, we have the sensitivity of looking left and right. Some of our brothers and sisters in public education have slipped up in ways we don't want to slip up.
Mhm.
Correct.
So to the degree that this audit confirms that we're not slipping up
Mhm.
is helpful. I understand hedging the responsibilities completely in auditing, but I guess the deficiencies you've identified would not intersect your knowledge with any of those deficiencies that would have caused the issues that we've seen throughout the state of Oregon. Is kind of my generalized question.
I think I know what you're more or less referring to, and you know,
Because I'm not sure.
I mean, I guess, you know, when we look at these findings or deficiencies we had, you know, we kind of stepped back, and I would say some of them are related to really what I would call accounting gyrations. You know, when you talk about something like accreted interest and like effective amortizing the premium using the effective interest method. I mean, these are just accounting things, you know, more or less. Some of the other adjustments were really related to, you know, mostly about timing of revenue and timing of expense and getting things in the right period. You know, we didn't have any concerns around cash. We didn't have any concerns like that. It was really when it comes down to GAAP, you know, like generally accepted accounting principles. That's where our findings were focused. So I know the district is already, I think maybe even addressed all of these. I think at this point, I'm not sure, maybe not quite all of them. There's probably maybe still some areas that may need some tweaking, but nothing here that caused us concerns as your auditors, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
So Margaret was gonna just, on the things that we've fixed already, are there?
Oh,
She
yes.
just said,
I was planning to deliver that during the corrective action plan. However,
Okay.
I would be happy to deliver it here. Which would you prefer?
so is it here or out there? Is it just?
My plan was out there.
Okay,
later.
let's do it out there,
All right.
so that you
And
have to repeat yourself.
to put your parts at ease, maybe. I will say that Aria's assessment is correct. If we have 50% of these were addressed with the adjusting entries and updated schedules that came in order to finish this audit. 50% of these are water under the bridge. They are set up so that the remainder of the life of the debt service will be not only paid correctly, which it always was, but reported in alignment with general accepted accounting principles. So 50% done. If it's not done, there's a plan in place to get it done, hence the conversation with the superintendent this morning. And I can go into more detail. Something that would be helpful to speak on my assessment of our neighbors, their struggles and where the audit comes in, or should I say that?
Yeah, I would save that. If you don't have specifics, I think we stick with us.
Yep.
Okay, so, any more from Margaret, Pete, you've been real quiet, so you must agree with everything that Margaret has said.
That's
I'll
true.
write that down, write that down.
You know, Pete, this board has more experience than they do with Mayor Dennis. Can you share your assessment of how the audit went?
I guess I'll speak in broad strokes. I very much agree with things that have been said so far. I agree that the level of rigor that the decreased materiality and therefore increased scrutiny in all areas of the audit puts the district in a firmer position going forward with knowing exactly where we're at and allowing our decision makers the best information to provide, make the most effective decisions, which I think is the name of the game. It was unfortunate that we were late and that did have a cost. I do not expect that to happen in future years based on the relationship that we've built and the things that are either already done or in progress to be done based on what Superintendent Cook and Margaret are talking about.
And then I had just one other, and I think probably it's part of what's out there. The letter that the board received about the audit, the analysis, I don't know what it's called. But it's on the letterhead for Superintendent Hugh with the date of a 2025 date. However, I realized that the time period was during his time as superintendent. So is that why it stays as that?
That's right.
And is that mentioned in here anywhere that I didn't see it? But it's just because he at the time was in charge. He was the man.
So these are the audited financial statements for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2024.
Right, okay. It
We're
just
looking
was
back
weird
to
because it
that.
had January 30, 2025 with James. I thought somebody
Especially
knows.
because then in other areas, John's signing things.
Right,
I
okay.
can see why that.
He's not on the
Yeah.
hook. All right.
And as we were clear earlier, the less my signature is used, the happier I am.
All right. So are there any other questions by the board? Any other questions from the board? So this is going to be an item out here when we get into our business meeting.
What I'll be doing when we get into our business meeting is reviewing the formal corrective action plan that I have prepared.
Mhm.
This is required by the Secretary of State of Oregon. I have prepared it. You will have a chance to decide whether you accept it. My plan for the business meeting is to review this at a very high level and distinguish if it has been addressed. And if it hasn't, what the plans are to address it in the future.
So when we have, so this is the one that's has the Oregon, the Secretary of State.
That's right.
Okay, so I would ask then that we spell Holly's name correctly on this.
Yes,
You're
Erin,
the Lord to
thank
that.
you.
Okay, okay, all right.
Please
Okay.
accept my
I
apologies.
rather liked it. I thought maybe we had a new board member.
I was so.
Because then I went back and looked at my own name and I thought, is that spelled right? I
I
can't
did-
spell it anymore.
I did suggest to Ms. Riggleman that maybe she should change her name.
That would-
Oh,
It just means, Holly and I read it.
uh-huh.
You know, that's all that means is
I
Holly and I
was
read
so
it.
excited to get the accent over Director Gomez's last name. It wasn't there in the prior year and that's meaningful.
Yeah.
And then I'm sorry.
I think Holly actually gets confused very often. There's not a lot of names that begin with H.
Thank you for your grace.
All right.
I appreciate my name being spelled correctly.
Yeah, we do
It's
too.
my pleasure.
Yes. All right. So any other questions? I don't see any. So any other questions or comments from our auditors this evening?
No, thank you for, giving us the opportunity to be your auditors. Feel free to reach out if you do have questions. We are available throughout the year, not just during the audit, which, was quite a bit of the year this time. It won't always be, but yeah, feel free to reach out to us if questions do come up.
Then I think you are welcome to, it's a public meeting. You could stay, but you are also welcome to leave if you like. So, Myra, you get to stay.
We will
Thank
see.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Back to the agenda. All right. Perfect. So as mentioned earlier, we do not have an executive session regarding personnel. On discussion items, future board agenda topics. Tracy, we've cleaned up a lot of those. Are most of those either in process? They're going to be scheduled in? they're being worked on. I don't think we had any that were outstanding, so,
Couple of them are at the retreat at the end of the month. The DLI update that Myra requested will be
Mhm.
April when we have our plans a little
okay,
further along for second year.
okay, all right. Just looking to see, because I didn't have any other notes. Yeah, I don't think we have, I think we have everything else. So announcements. We will, adjourn this meeting, have a little bit of time, and then our regular board business meeting on February 5th, 2025 in Council Chambers Public Safety and Schools Building will start at 7 o'clock. And I believe there'd be no other business in the work session. We are adjourned. Thank you.